Okay. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to our Nampa City Council meeting. We do have a full agenda, and I apologize, we're starting about 2 minutes late, maybe. 1. Okay, here we go. So this is a special council meeting, and because of that, we do have a tradition. And our tradition at our council meetings is that we open in prayer and the pledge. And I believe we've asked Brad Daniels if he would open in prayer this morning. So thank you, Brad. Brad, thank you so much. Okay, roll call.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Jingula.
Here.
Bills.
Here.
Reynolds.
Here.
Haverfield.
Here.
Griffin.
He's here.
Okay. All present.
Great. Okay, so today, we don't have timelines on our agenda, but we've got 1 hour for each of the two. We have an hour for Valley Regional Transit, about 10 minutes for an animal control department update, and then we have about 45 minutes for West Valley Humane Society, which will happen about 8:15. I tell you what, a lot of work has gone into this next discussion that we have, and I just want to start, and Elaine, go ahead and come forward. This is our Valley Regional Transit discussion. I just want to say thank you for all the work that has gone into just this discussion, so thank you. Take it away.
Well, thank you. And I would like to say it's a pleasure to be here, but it's 7 o'clock in the morning, so I'm not sure. No, actually it is. I really appreciate having sat on that side, how hard it is to balance a full-time job with the work that you do. And I know that at least in Nampa, in part, you are able to do that by doing these morning meetings. So, I thank you. Your citizens really should, because I know that you're doing a lot to make sure that you serve them the best you can. So thank you for that.
I think you lost your mic. So because of recording, we're going to have to pause for just a second. So do you need us to bring you a mic? Thank you. Well, it was echoing, and I don't know what happened, but thank you. Sorry. Oh, I think you're good. I think it's just the mic. It's our system. So do we have your PowerPoint? Probably. Okay, so hopefully we can... Okay, let's do it. See how that mic's doing.
Is that now recording okay? All right. Well, I can at least start with the introduction while the PowerPoint's coming up. So thanks for having us here. One thing I would also like to say is, as hard as it is sometimes to have this back and forth, I think it's been really good for us. I hope it ends up being really good for you as well. We've had to dig into service in Canyon County, understand it better, figure out how, in understanding it better, we can serve you better. And I think we're going to show today that that's actually worked. We are serving you better. We do have ridership that's up. We do have riders that are really satisfied with it, want more. And we also, I think, much better understand the integration of all of the pieces in Canyon County than we did before, because there are a lot of pieces, and I'll explain a little bit about that. We're sort of getting there, maybe. So I wanted to start with explaining all the services that are in Canyon County, because there are quite a few pieces. You know that we have the fixed route. You know that we have the on-demand service, the microtransit. And within that, we also have a service called Access or paratransit that is required by the federal government. Anytime you have a fixed route, you have to provide paratransit to anyone within 3/4 of the fixed route who has a disability that doesn't allow them to use the fixed route, get to and from it. And so because we have a little bit of a reduced area on that access service because of the changes that we made last year, we have a little bit of capacity on the access service, and we're trying to figure out ways that we can use that on the on-demand, because the on-demand is over capacity. We turn down almost 800 rides a month on the on-demand because there's just not seats available at the right time in the right place. And so if we can keep all of this together as one integrated system, we think we can continue to work to make it more integrated and bring more capacity without higher costs. So we're hopeful that as we work through this, you guys are willing to do that. Go ahead and move forward a couple of slides, if you would, when you get there.
Do you have a clicker?
What's that?
Do you have a clicker? To
Yeah, I can see it here.
But can you advance it?
Oh, I think he was going to advance it.
He's going to advance it.
We thought,
Okay.
because of the way it was working.
Okay.
Okay, one more, if you would. So there's a description of that. And we have this Beyond Access service, and I'll describe it a little bit a couple of slides from now. One more slide, if you would. Oh. Oh. We're still having trouble, it looks like.
Well, while he's pulling that up, Mayor, I actually
Sure.
have a question, and just for
Sure,
the
absolutely.
discussion moving forward, I'm already writing notes down. When you say that on demand, we have to turn away 800 rides a month, is that in the entire system or here specifically in Nampa?
That's in the entire system, of course, so that's Nampa and Caldwell. But we do know that 82% of the rides either start and or are fully within Nampa. So
Of the 800.
On the on-demand system.
Of all rights.
Yeah, so
More
either
than
they
800.
start or end in Nampa, or they're fully within Nampa. So we do know that Nampa really is a big part of the on-demand system.
Okay.
Mayor, I have another question for Elaine, if you don't mind. Elaine, we just mentioned it just a second ago, but the Council on Aging discussed this yesterday at our board meeting, and that was the availability and the transportation of the seniors to and from lunch.
Yeah.
And so that's been really difficult lately because of the issues with Metro, I guess. So how can you include that in with everything else you do? Because to me, that's a major priority, because that's where they actually go and eat. Maybe the only meal they have during the day.
Yeah, it's a really big thing. So when we get back to the slides, I'll be able to show you a little bit more about this. The Beyond Access service that we run used to be separate services for each of the senior centers. And they had overlapping and also disconnected zones or service areas. And so what was happening is that people could get to lunch at the senior center, but they couldn't get to a doctor's appointment because it was across the boundary. They certainly couldn't get to a doctor's appointment at the Meridian St. Luke's or in Boise or even in Caldwell in many cases. So what we did is worked with all those service providers to consolidate all of that into one zone. And we now have one zone, and it goes all the way from almost Parma to southeast Boise. And it's been a real boon for people who need to travel outside of the zone. And for the most part, those services within the zone have worked very well also. Metro Community Services is our service partner, especially in Canyon County on that service. We contract with them to provide those rides. Right now, they're struggling with having lost some drivers and also having a couple of vehicles that are down. We've been working with them. We're actually going to help them purchase a couple of new vehicles. Oh, good. And then I can advance it myself. We're going to work with them to purchase a couple of new vehicles. And they also had turnover at their operations manager at the same time. So this all hit at once. So in the last 2 weeks, frankly, they have struggled to be able to provide enough drivers and enough rides. And it's really hit the Nampa Senior Center probably the hardest. We recognize it. We've been trying to fill in. We only have so many drivers and so many vehicles as well. And so in filling in, we haven't been able to meet all of those rides. We're going to go meet with them next week. We're going to talk it through. We're going to help them understand what's going on and help us understand better their needs so we can make sure that this doesn't happen again. But it was a confluence of events. It wasn't Valley Regional Transit vehicles and drivers. We were trying to fill in, and I'm not trying to lay blame on Metro. They've been a great partner. They just hit this really rough spot where they lost a couple of drivers right at the time their operations manager retired, and they had vehicles down. And sometimes that happens, right? We all have probably dealt with some of that personally.
Mayor Kling, so the question I have now is yes, we're meeting with the VRT next Tuesday at 3:30 at the Senior Center.
Yeah.
But Mayor, is that covered under our agreement with VRT, or the Senior Center pays their own?
The Senior Center doesn't pay it. The state of Idaho, through the Area Agency on Aging, pays us a fee, a yearly fee, and that's the local match for that service.
Yeah, so we don't match funds then.
So
right?
it's not as,
Okay.
the city does not participate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. But I did want to explain the on-demand service because I know it's been a real question, or the Beyond Access service. This was the service areas prior to us consolidating them, and this is the service area now. It's more complete, and as I said, you can get rides across those zones rather than just inside each of them. And so in the end, we've been able to provide almost 20% more rides per year in the first year of service than were provided the year before, even though there's been some of these, incidents where a particular ride that used to happen really regularly maybe got interrupted while we figured out how to make this work better. But we're committed to making it work better in the future. So other things that happen in Canyon County, we have late night, which is for qualified riders who are service workers and can't get to or from work because the bus isn't running then. We have rides to wellness, which are also qualified rides. We contract with private sector providers funded by the healthcare system to provide these rides. We have a volunteer driver program that provides a few qualified rides. And then we have the private for-profit, which provides non-emergency medical rides, typically paid for by Medicaid. We have a couple of private nonprofits. Treasure Valley Transit also provides non-emergency medical rides. Half of that's paid for by Medicaid. We extend to them some federal funding through our 5307 funding to pay for the other part of that. That funding is our most flexible funding, and it is the same funding that we use to provide public transportation. In the case of our contract with Treasure Valley Transit, it is to provide these non-emergency medical rides. Because of that funding, though, they are also able to provide private care rides, which are folks who would otherwise maybe qualify for the non-emergency medical, but they're not on Medicaid, and so they do provide a few of those, but they're not open to the general public. And then Metro Community Services, who contracts with us on the Beyond Access, also does deliveries for Meals on Wheels and a few other things. Primarily, those are the two things they do. So on the performance side, we are really, really excited about this. You guys asked us to do better, and I think we did. We did a big service change last June, and what we've done here, because we don't have a full year's data yet on the service change, we've taken the 10 months of service before the service change compared to the 10 months after, and you can see that rides in Canyon County are up 27%. We know that, as we say, that a lot of those, and I'll have a slide later that tells how many are originate in Nampa or stop in Nampa. On the other side, it shows the access to rides. That's people who are within a third of a mile of a ride and can access them. That's gone up 22%. We're at a place, these numbers are pretty remarkable, the 103% increase. We're at a place now where just providing hourly service, which you haven't had for some time, all day long, is telling folks, oh, now I can rely on this bus and I can use it, and we predict that ridership will go up even more in the future. So you challenged us again, okay, what would happen if we didn't provide all the funding that we did last year? So we created 4 scenarios. One was keep what we have. One was reduce service A, which is maintain the fixed route but not the on-demand. One was reduce service with the on-demand but without the fixed route. One was expand service. What would happen if we did that? And then one was eliminate transit, public transit in Nampa. Because the way that we're funded doesn't allow you often to hear from the public on these things. You hear from us, you don't hear from them. We went out to the public and said, hey, what do you think about all of this that we're talking about? So the first one is maintain. Here's what you have in Nampa today. You have the on-demand system. You have the Route 40, which originates in Caldwell and runs through a small portion of Nampa and then goes express into Boise. The Route 42 is the real winner. It's the one that does hourly service up and down the boulevard. People are really beginning to use that service. And then the 45 stops at CWI, but goes all the way into downtown Boise, and so some people come in on it and then catch the 42. The 42 also goes into Boise. It goes to Town Square Mall. Here's what we predict the ridership will be next year if we keep things the same. So about 90,000 rides. We showed you 10 months. A full year of that would have been about 90,000 rides. This year, we think next year we'll have 100,000 rides on these services. The cost to you for the service part of this is $747,000, and you can see again how many people are able to access it. Really important thing that we did this year, the American Public Transportation Association has a tool that allows us to estimate the economic activity that is a result of the expenditures you and we make in the system. And in Canyon County, for the about less than $2 million that are spent on public transportation, we estimate that there's 8,500,000 of economic activity as a result. Of the boardings that we predict on this system, 54,000 will be in Nampa in some way or another. So we ask, we'll get to what people's reaction to all of this was later. Wanted you to understand what all the scenarios were. So scenario A is get rid of the on-demand. There's some pretty big impacts if we get rid of on-demand. Particularly because there are places in Nampa that will just no longer have access. While the Route 42 on the boulevard is really useful for people who live within walking distance of it, getting to it can be a real problem if we get rid of the on-demand system. So certainly wouldn't be our preference, but it's certainly something that could happen. The other thing that would happen is that the folks in Caldwell who are using on-demand to get to jobs in Nampa, to get to shopping in Nampa, we provided 20,000 trips to grocery stores last year. Those trips won't be available to them either. It will also have an impact on economic activity in your city. We think a hit of about 1.7, or in the county, $1.7 million less economic activity and 26,000 fewer boardings in Nampa. One thing I didn't mention, back up to the keep it as it is, the other thing that we've been able to do with the changes in service is increase the boardings per hour. They went up from 3 to almost 5 across the board in Nampa. A little bit lower on the on-demand. The fixed routes are above 5. The on-demand's a little bit below that. That's a really good predictor of success in a transit system. So we're really excited about that. In this service scenario, those boardings per hour would go down. And so it would be a less productive service, if you will. Service alternative B is keep the on-demand, but get rid of the fixed route. In our case, the only way to do that really is to reroute the 40 so that it doesn't come through Nampa at all. It goes through Caldwell and then hits the freeway, and then stop the 42 at CWI, because there's no way to, it would not be fair, I don't think, to run a bus through Nampa and not pick people up. I just don't feel good about doing that. So we'll stop the 45, the 42 and the 45 both at CWI in this scenario. This one also is an economic hit. Not quite as much, because people really do rely on the on-demand to get to those service centers, the grocery stores and the medical appointments, but it still has quite a hit, and 25,000 less boardings in Nampa. So compare the costs. If you get rid of on-demand, your costs go down to $338 for service. If you get rid of the fixed route, your costs still go down, not quite as much, to $410 for service. But both of these impact people in your community. Well, what if we expanded service? We've been working on a new plan called Valley Connect 3.0. And in that plan, we have said, what would happen if we brought Boise levels of frequency and expansion of service to Canyon County? So these green lines are lines that we predict in the future should be 15-minute service within the city of Nampa and Caldwell. And that kind of frequency, we've learned in Boise, makes a tremendous difference. So we had 2 lines that had that kind of frequency. We recently added a third. The boardings on that line have gone up exponentially, and the boardings per hour as well. And so part of that expansion would bring that. Also, we'd have some service down into South Nampa and service on Garrity. All of that we think would be really productive. The smaller lines are fixed route or maybe deviated fixed route that would bring people to that more frequent service, and also really offer opportunity to get almost anywhere. People were pretty excited about this opportunity. And as you can see, it's actually not as expensive. I don't know, Councilmember Griffin, if you remember, you said, well, having the kind of service we really should have would be $6 million a year. It's only $2.6 million a year. Not too bad. Less than I expected, to be honest. I didn't, until we started doing this long-range plan, I wasn't sure. So something that maybe isn't as out of reach as we thought it was over time to work toward. And you can see the kind of boardings, almost 500,000 in Nampa, just in the services within Nampa, almost 800,000 boardings. So imagine if there were 750,000 less cars on the road, because that's what this would mean. It would change that metric as well. It would impact congestion. Okay, well, what about eliminating service? This is a really, really tough one. It means that you wouldn't have any fixed route. The on-demand would serve Caldwell. It would still serve the CWI campuses, but it wouldn't serve anywhere else in Nampa. Would put tremendous pressure on that Beyond Access system that, as we noted, is already at capacity. It isn't over capacity yet, but it's at capacity, and so adding more rides to it is going to be very difficult without more service. And so it will leave an awful lot of people just high and dry in your community. It'll cost your economy $3.2 million. It's a big hit on the economy. So it's not a direct one-to-one. I know it's hard to see. You invest that money, and then people can go to the grocery store, they can go to the doctor, they can spend money in ways they couldn't otherwise. But it really would. It would also probably increase your first responder costs, because there are people who wouldn't be able to get to doctor's appointments that might otherwise need other help. And as you can see, a lot of folks in Nampa just couldn't get on services. So here's a chart that shows it all together. We think that we're hoping that as we work together during this budget season, you can see your way forward to at least keep what we have and begin discussions about what it would take to make that more stable, and to look at a day when we could talk about the expansion that people are we're so excited about. You'll see in a minute. And obviously to not just keep what you have in the economy, but actually add to your economy if we can. So community feedback. We did an online survey. We also did a transit day in Nampa and Caldwell on May 6th. We invited people to come. We had 15 service organizations, government organizations join us, and over 200 people participated in either the survey, 220, either the survey or in person. Of those, most of them were Nampa residents. The other big tranche was Caldwell residents, and then some others from various parts of Canyon County. They are people who are active in the transit system, so you might say, well, gosh, this means that the other people in our community don't care. I wouldn't read it that way. I would read it that these are the people who care the most. But there are a lot of people in your community, as I've talked to them, who care quite a bit. And as you can see, about 30% of these folks either would ride if they could or never ride, but they're still, you'll see that they support transit despite that. So what did they say? Well, they would love to see expanded service. And the expanded service that they would love to see, I'll show in a minute, is that frequent service. If you can't expand service, they very strongly recommend that you maintain what you have, and very few of them want to reduce service, and those A, B there were just a choice between which one of these, if you had to, would you choose. There's also a perception that everyone who rides is either elderly, older adults, disabled, or low income. You can see that 81 of the 220, this was actually based on 195 responses before we got the last little bit, are none of those, and yet very, very strongly supportive. At the same time, you can see that a majority of the people who use the system, about 55%, are folks who really do have a great need. So here's that. Expressed in a little bit different way. How much does your household spend on transportation? 55% of respondents in your community are transportation burdened. That means that they spend more than 15% of their disposable income on transportation. And that means that they have less money for food, less money to go out, less money to spend in the economy otherwise. So why do people like public transportation? because it does things for them that make their lives better. This is a quality of life issue for your community. And which routes would you like to see invested in if the system is expanded? Those frequent routes that we showed. People know from experience, if they've been in Boise, what it's like to have 15-minute service, and they would love to have even half-hour service here. Would mean the world to them, and they showed that. They'd also like to see service to some of the other parts of Nampa that aren't well served today. So what would happen if service is eliminated? It would cost people money. They'd have a hard time getting to destinations. One woman, you'll see in a moment, said, you know, for me it's life and death. I need this service. These are really important for folks. So again, you can look at this with a little jaded eye and say, well, these are people that already support public transportation, but 93% support you spending local government funding on that. I would note that it's less than 1% of your budget, and these are 1% of your constituents. So you could look at it that way as well. Lots of reasons that people choose public transportation or would like to, and not all of it is because they're desperate, but much of it is because it improves their quality of life. We think that's important. So we also had a focus group, both service providers, nonprofits, a few government agencies. We showed them these service scenarios and said, what would happen to your folks if some of these went into effect? The loss of the ADA paratransit service was a really big deal. For the folks who rely on that, it is a lifeline. They predict there'd be thousands of missed appointments, and if services are removed, that costs everyone money, particularly the healthcare system, but it also costs people health. If they can't make those appointments, they're not going to be as healthy. It would shift the burden to some of the other services that you pay a lot of dollars for, and in the end, we'd have higher healthcare costs and probably a burden on those first responders. We also talked to the public, and between the public and those outreach groups, those stakeholders, like I say, this one said, for us it would be a doomsday scenario. We don't know what we'd do. And for others, if they don't have a car, transit really is part of their life and their mobility and their independence. Like I showed, everyone wanted to expand service. Very few wanted to cut it. And they knew that if service were expanded, it could make a tremendous difference in this community. We also got a lot of letters of support. There's a new one. We'll make sure you get it from LEAP. These were in your packet. I hope you read them. I hope you also read the individual comments from people and looked at the list of places that are accessible because of the transit. These are things, as you make your decision, I hope you'll take into mind. These letters of support tell us that transit is not just something that's nice to have. It's something that for a lot of people in your community make the difference between whether they can get a job and keep a job or not. So as we did this, we said, okay, what are the things we heard most? Well, bus, we heard a lot. Access, get to work, service. You can see from this word cloud that people really do thrive when they have this service, and you can see that some of them are scared if they don't. We have a little video. I hope that I can figure out how to run it. Can you run it, or? We always knew this was going to be a challenge. Okay,
Are there words?
Yeah.
thank you.
If you need to put the mic on it, just thank you. Crystal, thank you.
I knew I wouldn't be able to do it, so, yeah. Okay. Little arrow come up to say yes? Sort of, not really, huh? Darn. Huh?
Is it separate on your drive?
Is it separate? It is separate on the drive, so if you go to the drive, you can probably find it. Oh, it's only embedded? Okay, you didn't do a separate, Okay, no, it's not a separate file. It's only embedded. We'll send this to you. There were a couple of folks who came that day that we really, really wanted you to understand from them firsthand the experience they have. So we'll make sure and send this to you. I hope you'll take a chance to take a look at it. Okay, so impacts. The loss of economic activity. It's a big one. We know that it's a hard number to see every day when you look, but we are pretty confident that it's one that really is important. There's also a loss of federal funding. If your money doesn't get spent, we can't spend this federal funding. We spend more federal funding than we spend local in Canyon County, so there's a loss of direct spending. Obviously, a loss of a lot of trips. Even with a reduced scenario, we'll have to deny more trips, either on Beyond Access or on the on-demand system itself. There will be reduced access to a variety of really important locations within Nampa and locations that your residents need to get to in other parts of the county. And it kind of isolates Nampa. It isolates your residents a bit and makes our transit, frankly, a little less efficient. I want to talk to you quickly, I know I've spent a lot of time already, but about what we're doing to grow funding without asking you for more money, because we're doing a lot. The increased ridership has increased fare collection. We've increased our advertising revenues every year that I've been here. This year we purchased all the bus benches. Previously, we only got a very small amount of the revenue from the advertising on those buses, on those benches. Now we'll get all of that revenue. We were able to purchase them at a break even, so the revenue will start flowing very quickly. The consolidation of Beyond Access services has allowed us to maintain as much service as was there previously and provide more rides for no more money, even though that system was already at capacity. And then we're beginning service partnerships. We've started a new program called Commercial Institutional Residential Contribution Program. In Boise, we've got one new subdivision to join. St. Luke's is going to become a service contributor, and we're talking, obviously, to Micron about doing the same. I know that there are businesses here and residential developments here that we could talk to if we could partner with you on that. We're also improving our residential pass program. Right now, it's not very friendly to use, and we think that there's a lot of opportunity, especially with large multifamily developments, to sell more passes. And we're pursuing facility and bus sponsorships and have a couple of leads. We're also exploring some strategic partnership investments in we are a subrecipient of a grant through the Build America Bureau with Pacific Northwest Economic Region, and we are looking at the feasibility of bringing TIFIA bonding to a parking garage project at CWI's campus in Boise. We're also looking at the feasibility of a joint development project at our Happy Day Transit Center. Both of those, if they came to fruition, would do two things. They'd offer us some local match funding because it's paid back with local funding. You can use it as local match, and then also offer us the opportunity to earn income from those developments. And we're examining high-performance opportunities along the rail corridor. There's a similar bonding program that can be brought to rail projects in Nampa. The north side of the tracks offers, I think, a real opportunity for that. And then we've been talking to your water renewal facility about using your methane. Right now, you flare it. It's the last thing in your strategic plan for making that plant as sustainable and ongoing as possible. We could use that methane if we have buses that are using that fuel, and we'd pay you for that. We'd also help you get a grant to pay for the facility to produce it, and anything you don't sell to us, you could sell to other people. So we think it's a real win-win, one of those kinds of things that if we can work together, we can all benefit from it. And if we go our separate ways, it makes it difficult for all of us to see those kinds of benefits and savings. So with that, here's what it means financially for you if you keep what you have. The promise we made you 3 years ago is that your total assessment this year would be this $862, and that's what it would be. If you reduce service, you could reduce it. You could even get rid of most of it, although we would ask you to still pay the general assessment and pay into the deferred capital maintenance that you've not been paying into. So that's why that last line is not zero. But we think the cost of that, while it may save you a few dollars in your budget, the cost of that, both to your community and to the economic impact of your community, would be more than what you'd get. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Elaine, I think we have your video, and so we're going to show it real quickly. I don't know how long the video is.
What's that?
The video, how long is, we've got it, and so we'll show it right now.
Okay. Oh, good.
We'll show it right now, and then we'll open council. We'll have about 10 minutes for questions. And then council, today we will not make a decision today. This is not a vote. This is an opportunity to listen and to ask questions. But, so Shara's sharing her screen, and here we go.
Great.
I'm Cindy Hartley. I live in Nampa.
I'm Andrew Mills. I live in Caldwell. I work in this school system right here, this building in Nampa.
My name is Jenny Freidel, and I live behind the old Hutchins. We used to use, back before the first cuts and stuff, but it was difficult because of access.
Sorry. Paul, what do you?
Maybe share with sound on. Let's try that. Okay. So it'd be the sharing.
I'd be happy to take questions while you're working on it if you want.
We are struggling.
Yeah, you can take that back. There you go.
Let's try it again. Let's just try it again. Nope. Go ahead and unmute and let's see. Okay. Can you hit play and just see what happens?
We always knew if we tried a video, it was going to be challenging.
Turn your sound off on your computer, but leave the sound off on the video. I mean, on. Okay, let's hit play again and let's just try it.
There's so many issues with having to travel in the street when you're on your own. The bus gets you out of that. If you can get on the bus, you don't have to worry about that, because it can get you to where you need to go safely.
Giving people the opportunity to work, to play, to have community. It makes me be able to contribute to the community in buildings like this.
For myself, I have medical condition. And
Well, I don't. It is planned.
even if you don't have like mobility issues, it means that you don't have to rely on the ability to pay for gas or the ability to have a van that works or the ability to have a ride in order to get to join in like Third Thursday or go to the library or get your groceries. And that helps people stay connected.
Freedom and the ability to get to and from anywhere I need to.
Why don't you come with me for a month? I'll take you around to all my doctor's appointments and sit and watch me try to get to these places. I'm trying to get better so I can be,
Well, it was a good try. We will watch it and we will send it out. Thank you so much. Okay, this has been a really good presentation. As I mentioned a minute ago, we're not going to make a decision today, but this is an opportunity for council to ask questions. So,
Mayor.
David? Councilman Bills, I should say.
So, Elaine, thank you for the work on the presentation. Thank you for bringing back the information that we asked for last year. It's a tough issue for me. My heart says I want to help. It's difficult because at times it seems like the actual ridership, the actual survey participants is fairly low from just a population point of view. So I'm trying to weigh through that. The part that probably at first blush, being able to see this, not yet studying it, is the expansion. It seemed like possible expansion would be, seemed like it could improve a couple of those routes, and it seems the more frequent routes than what seemed to be what we were learning last year and the prior year, last year for me. So I'm trying to understand what's the cost to try to start expanding frequency on the routes that really have use and that possible. I realize there could be a little bit of impact to those few individuals. It'd be a lot of impact, I understand that. But in just looking at it, seems like a couple of routes, if they were expanded frequency and one route possibly eliminated or really curtailed, balancing those dollars. Am I seeing that correctly? And then what would be the increased cost to Nampa if some of that did get expanded?
Yeah, no, you're right on target, actually. So first of all, to your point that it does seem like not very many people, I guess I would ask you how many times you've had 200 people here in the chambers for an issue. For us, this is a really, really good response in Canyon County in terms of the number of people who participated. It's hard to get people to find time to participate. And I understand it's, certainly when you're talking a city of 100,000, it's not a ton of people. Over 1,000 people daily use this service in your community. They're individual. We know that there are more than 1,000 individuals who use this. So it is about 1% of your population who depends on it. In terms of the frequency, you're absolutely right. What we did last year in the Ada County part of the system was reduce service on some of the lowest performing routes and increase service on the ones that we knew would perform much higher, and it worked. People respond to that. It does mean that you have to figure out ways to fill in the holes, and Ada County, we were able to do that because we had a grant that allowed us not just to do late-night service on Lyft, but to do service on Lyft that would take you from your home to the nearest transit stop. And we've had 4,000 rides on that service more than we had. We only had 2,000 the year before. We've had over 6,000 this year. We used it to fill in the holes of the places where we couldn't provide service anymore. So to your question, how much would it cost to expand versus staying the same or reducing? We could get you those numbers. We didn't run the numbers, say, what would it take to make the 42 an hour, a half-hour service instead of an hourly service, which would mean a great deal, frankly, to your residents. I can get you those numbers. I also spoke about how we're trying to increase the number of seats available on the on-demand without increasing costs. And there's probably other things we could do for that microtransit. Right now, we're running accessible vehicles for every single ride. There are places like Twin Falls and Idaho Falls who are not doing that, but I'll be honest with you, their productivity, their rides per hour are not higher than ours. And so I don't know that we'd save a lot of money there, except if we got rid of service altogether, or if we were able to find a grant like we have in Boise to be able to use a transportation network company like Lyft or Uber. So long answer to say I don't know the answer, except that I think if we dug in and worked with you, we could figure out a way to do some expansion, either for the same cost, if you're willing to accept some service reductions elsewhere, or for not very much more. And we'd be happy to work with you on figuring out what that might be.
Well, that's part of what I'm trying to see from a numbers point of view. If there was what is being asked of us or slightly more, and a change of what we're doing, at least based on what I was seeing in the report here this morning, that potentially we could increase ridership or effectiveness of the system, which would better justify the expenditure.
Yeah.
Versus staying as is and
Yeah.
muddling along, potentially targeting some areas we could potentially get better service. So
Yeah.
at least that's what I was seeing, so that's why I'm asking that question. That's why I'm taking your time.
I think it's a real possibility. I'd mentioned this, Caldwell thought about expanding service, decided not to. A lot of reasons behind that, not all of which had to do with Valley Regional Transit, frankly. In talking to the city council members over there, some of them, not all of them, obviously, are interested in exploring that again, not this year, but next year. And I would say that a partnership with Caldwell on that increased service could make the cost of that service much lower for both of you. So I guess I'd be really excited to think about, let's, move things forward as they are this year with a plan to figure out how to increase that service in a partnership with your neighboring community. I think there's a ton of potential there.
And to your point made on 200 respondents, how many do we get here for hot button issues? I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have two, so Natalie, and then Mark has a comment also.
And Councilman
Thank you.
Griffin.
And Councilman Griffin has a comment, and we've got about 4 minutes, so we're going to try to keep it really tight.
Elaine, thank you so much. I think you've done such a good job, and I just really appreciate all the numbers. I'm going to need time to go through it all. This is just an overload, but I appreciate the data, so thank you for that. If there's ever an opportunity for us to lobby at the state, let us know. I'm still just not understanding why this is not a state thing and it's municipalities, because decisions that we're making are impacting neighboring municipalities, vice versa, and it's not fluid. And I don't envy your position to have to go and scrounge money from all of us. So let us know if there's ever an opportunity. Because I looked through the packet, I just want to put it on the record that council did receive an email from another patron on April 10th. I'm going to paraphrase. just for time, but it was from Lance McGinnis Brown, PhD, and he says, as a young college student living in Canyon County, I relied on the bus daily to get to my classes at CWI and then Boise State. During that time, I often lacked other forms of reliable transportation. Without the bus access, completing my education and getting employment would have been much more difficult for me, if not impossible at times. I asked what bus Lance used, and they said the 42 and the 150, so I'm just putting that on record. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, and I'll certainly loop you guys in.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the City Council, Mark Stoyer, Senior Director of Development Services. I just wanted to make 2 comments as you consider the information before you. One, last year, VRT promised to fund pedestrian projects on 16th Avenue, and VRT is working actively with Crystal's group, and that project will be moving forward, so that was some funding we received back. Second, Tom is working on a biogas project at the wastewater treatment plant and has also been talking with VRT and working collaboratively with them for them to be a customer of that natural gas for the fueling of their transit vehicles. So taking those 2 things into consideration.
And that would save us money and make you money, because right now we're paying market rate, and we could work a deal that we'd get a enhanced wholesale rate.
That's great. Thank you. Sebastian?
I have a few, but I'll make them quick and try and prioritize. And then I'll comment on my experience once again. On the 40, 42, 45, how many times a day do those routes stop? How many times do those run? Every hour, starting at what time?
I'm going to defer to Stephen because he knows those details.
So the 42 runs from 7 until 6:30 in the evening, hourly. So
6:30 in the morning to 7 evening, I think.
So it would be about 13 or 14 trips in each direction, coming and going. And then on the 40, there are 3 trips in the morning, 4 trips in the afternoon, and on the 45, I think it's also the same, 3 and 4.
Okay. The number, was it 75,000 or 750,000 less vehicles if we did the expanded scenario off the road? And how do we gather that number?
Well, so experience in other places is as you grow transit service, you do reduce the number of people who are driving. It's not a one-to-one, it's hard to predict, but if we added 750,000 transit rides, it's likely most of those would be people who would otherwise have driven one way or another, so those vehicles come off the road. Transit is the one proven strategy that does reduce congestion. You can widen roads all you want, and as we've seen in this valley, congestion doesn't go down.
Thank you. And then I'm trying to, and I think we all need time to look at the data and the information. It's tough for me as well. I appreciate the full level view of how this impacts Canyon County, but unfortunately we're dealing with Nampa, and I'm sure you have all felt a little beat up by me in this process, but I want to guarantee to you, everyone is having to negotiate. Our prosecutor's office is having to negotiate with us. We're about to see the Humane Society. We've had to turn down funding the Salvation Army. Everyone is getting impacted somewhere or another, and as the good Councilman Bills states, we can't be everything for everyone. It's tough, it's crappy. I think Natalie's point is important. If there ever is a time to go to the state, I'll testify about my experience because it was, and I've said this in every interview, it's clean, it's comfortable, it has Wi-Fi, and it really is a convenience if you're willing to do it. On the flip side, I think it's difficult as well for me personally to drive 2.5 miles to even get to my bus stop, leave my car in a place that potentially I'm going to get back to late in the evening or not at all. For not me, but my senior citizen community, the closest bus stop is 3.5 miles. And if we expand the services, looking at the 54, From the senior center, it's 3.3 miles, 52 is 2.6 miles, 3.4 miles is the 50, 2.6 miles to the 52. And I just look at the numbers in a sense of if our goal is to alleviate congestion and get cars off the road, cars still have to get to these stops. If we want to say, well, the economic impact, I would have liked to see the economic impact of Nampa, but I appreciate seeing it from the county side. We should be thinking about that. And it's tough now getting the full court press because Nampa's kind of the last stronghold in the sense. Canyon County went away, and that's unfortunate. Star went away, and that's unfortunate. Caldwell is to be determined. I believe they're going to maintain, but I don't think they're increasing. I don't know if they're decreasing from what I've heard. So Nampa, the big player in this, having seen now the TV interviews, and you had our local Channel 6 neighbor get on there and say he waited for an hour and a half and never saw a person get on or get off at CWI. That's tough for me to stomach. You have
So for sake of time, because we're out of time and we're not discussing it today, I think we really, today's focus is ask questions, clarification, because I don't think any council, no one's sharing their opinions right now. And I'm sorry but in order to honor our time, do you have any questions?
I've got one. Out of the 181 recipients, how many of those were within City of Nampa? 64% were. Thank you.
Because you did both Nampa and Caldwell.
Yeah, we asked them where they came from, and 64% were from Nampa.
We're from Nampa.
Who
Thank you.
participated.
Okay.
I would, if I could add this one last thing. When you start and stop service and do bits and pieces, it makes it much more difficult to build ridership over time. We're building ridership. We've showed you that. We're going to build it more next year. I know your experience was that we're not very many riders on there. That route now has 45% more riders than it had when you rode it. If we stop it, it will take years to recover that ridership because people don't trust that it will be there and that it will be reliable if it comes back. So I know how hard budgets are this year. I really urge you to at least maintain what we have while we have these discussions about how we can make it better. Because I think we can. I think, Councilmember Bills, you're absolutely right. For not very much, we can make it enough better that it makes it a service that's worthwhile. In terms of the seniors, they can be used beyond access, which is a door-to-door service.
Mayor, I have one last critical question.
Okay, go ahead.
For last year's funding, we were given the $530 some odd thousand improvement for the bus stop grant, the federal grant that passed over. If we reduce funding this year, does that money remain? Does that get reduced, or does that go away?
Valley Regional Transit is committed to that grant. FTA has not approved it yet. We're in the process of getting it to them for approval. We had to wait for some things in the development department. We won't make that decision. We will be fully behind it, and we will ask for them to fund it. But if there's no transit service there, I can't predict what they'll say. It's kind of out of my hands.
And could they pull the funding back if there's no transit service there?
What's that?
Could they pull the funding back if there's no transit service there?
They could look at it and say, why is there no transit service there?
And have us pay it
question the application, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and Councilman Griffin, I'm sorry to pause you. We are over time. This was a really good presentation. Thank you. Council, let's be committed to watch the video. I just appreciate the information. We will have a time as council to get to have discussion. We have 2 months prior to our budget meetings. So I think we have opportunity to study the information, to reach out to VRT. Mark Stoyer is taking the lead in communication. You can always reach out to Mark Stoyer and he can help you with information. We've got time to research before we make the decision. So Council will continue to dig and ask questions, and thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate how hard you guys are working on this.
Thank
you. Means a lot.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item we have, we're going to start with our annual update with animal control. So when police did their update at the workshop, we did not get to animal control. So this is going to be just a quick update on animal control, and then we'll move into the West Valley Humane Society presentation. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council. Give me just 1 second. I'll pull this up. Maybe.
We had problems.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm going to kind of burn through my slides here relatively quickly so that I leave plenty of time for Nick from West Valley Humane Society. Again, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Eric Skoglund with Nampa Police Department. So I want to highlight our animal control officers. I think they are here today, sitting in the back over there with Corporal Kern, Becky, and Leanne, our two animal control officers. They've both been here less than a year, so they're fairly new to the position, but they have got their feet wet plenty over the last few months and are doing an excellent job. So some of what animal control deals with are found animals, and a little bit about those procedures is that a lot of animals are chipped these days. So one of the first things they do is to try to determine if that animal has been chipped and try to get it back to its owner, and they do a very good job in that regard. When we're not able to locate the owner, then we do end up taking animals to the West Valley Humane Society. Other animal calls that we deal with are animals needing medical aid. One of the first things that we'll do when we find an animal that is injured is to contact West Valley Humane Society. They do have vets that they contract with, and if they have a vet available, that's where we take the animals. Occasionally, there has not been vets available over the past few years, or over the past several months, so we will, in emergent situations where it can't wait, we will take animals to Viking Veterinary, which we contract with as well. And I'll give you a little slide on some of the expenses we have related to that. We will also seize animals when we have cruelty cases, and in those situations, we often are required to hold on to those animals until either a judge directs us that we can release it, or until that case is adjudicated. So that can take weeks, weeks or sometimes months before those resolutions come through. And talking about the Viking vet expenses, just looking at FY23 through the current year, so we've spent about $6,000 in 23 and about $4,000 in 24, according to the records that we have. And then year to date so far this year, we're up to about $7,000 this year. And looking at how many animals we are taking to West Valley Humane Society, looking at the last 4 years. In 22, we were at 469, and at 23, we're at 539, and it has declined slightly over the last year or so. We've worked pretty diligently because of some issues that the Humane Society has been trying to work through to try and return animals to owners and avoid having to take animals to West Valley, frankly. So we have been working hard in that direction. But obviously, there's a lot of situations where you don't have other options. So this is just another chart that shows us the statistics in terms of those calls for service. Just another way of looking at it. You can see the little bit of decline over the last year or two. When we break down the calls for service and the different types of the calls for service, you can see that just under 50% are animals at large, stray animals that are contained by a resident who is contacting us to come and pick it up. Barking dog calls are a pretty significant number of those. And then welfare checks, deceased animals, that sort of a thing. Those are the bigger chunks. There's a lot of different types of calls for service that we get related to animals, but those are the larger number of those calls.
Excuse me, Mayor, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
First, I can't read this. It needs to be bigger, okay? So I'm going to ask you the question, is of the 530-something that you just quoted, how many of those are repeat offenders? And do you, I should say the masters, the owners, and how many of those are cited for being repeat offenders, not taking care of their animals? And if so, where does that money go to?
Those are good questions. I don't have a breakdown on how many of those are repeat offenders, Councilman Rodriguez. What was the second?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out if the parents or the masters aren't taking care of them, then where happened to they don't tie their dog? No, I don't believe in that. But if they don't lease their dogs or let them run at large all the time, and you having to pick them up all the time, then there should be some repercussion for them. And so I'm saying, do you cite them? And when you do, does the court send that money to West Valley or send it to Napa City?
So Councilman Rodriguez, in response to citing, I don't believe that typically, and I'm going to look over my shoulder at Corporal Kern and Animal Control here, but I don't believe that we will typically cite on a first occurrence. However, if we do have repeat offenses, then we will issue citations for that. As far as where the funding goes back to, that's a city code violation, so I think it does return back to the city, or based on however that breakdown works, it is a city code violation.
Okay. We don't know what that number is, apparently.
No, I don't keep those statistics that specific.
Right.
So.
Well, I'm just trying to reinvest back into the animal control issue, or department, if you will. So that's why I asked that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. So beyond your typical dog at large type of a call, there's a variety of different calls for service that animal control deals with. And if it's an animal, we call them. So, or the city calls us and we respond out there. So these are just a few of the calls that our staff has dealt with, from chickens roaming the neighborhood, goats in the roadway, turkeys needing water, rock chucks in a car engine. It is everything that they deal with. So they have to be pretty creative in how they manage a lot of those situations. Just a little bit of information regarding what city licensing fees look like. This just gives you a little bit of a breakdown on some of the more standard types of things that people are charged for when it comes to their dogs. I'm going to segue here pretty quickly to Nick. So I have just a couple of slides to give you an introduction to the shelter and some of the issues that we have seen in working with them. So this last summer, the shelter was in a state of crisis, and staff from the Idaho Humane Society and Best Friends Animal Society responded to their request for assistance because of the issues with overcrowding. They had to go through some staff reductions to try and manage their finances. And the intervention from Idaho Humane Society and Best Friends has led to some positive changes, at least from an outsider's perspective or my perspective, looking at what has occurred there. I walked through the animal shelter a few times in the past year, and I will tell you, a year ago, there were kennels in the hallways, dogs in every space you could put one. It was definitely bursting at the seams, and in a state that was of concern. Now, or my most recent time that I went through the animal shelter, that was a few months ago, no kennels in the hallways. There was room for animals to be brought in, so the overcrowding issue had been resolved. And just in conversations with Nick recently, I know that management has gone through an overhaul since last year. They have pretty much an entirely new board that has taken over. They are coming forward today, which is why Nick is here, is to talk about their financial situation. So the current contract, or the one that we entered into last year, was for $83,300 annually. Caldwell, for some perspective, is at $68,200, and county has been at $300,000, I think, for several years. The West Valley Humane Society for FY26 is proposing a rebalancing of government contributions, which I will let Nick explain and get into, which is why he is here to answer questions for you today. And that breakdown looks like the following: $720,000 for Nampa, $540,000 for Caldwell, $240,000 for county. And with that, I will turn it over to Nick.
Mayor Kling, I have
Eric,
a question
thank
for
you.
you. Who is represented on this board from Nampa?
So currently, there is not a representative. There is a vacant position, last I was told, and Nick can probably speak to what they are looking for in terms of representation from Nampa.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we'll talk about that. We have talked about that. It just kind of depends on what our decisions in as we
Yeah.
move forward. So.
Okay.
Nick, thank you. Eric, thank you for that overview and our numbers for Nampa. And Nick, thank you for being here today.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Just a point of order. I do just want to announce that Council President Reynolds is leaving in person, but will be joining on Teams.
Thank you.
Morning.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, yeah, we'll jump right into it. My name is Nick Lippincott. I am the board president for West Valley Humane Society. Thank you, Gogan, for taking the hardest part out of today, which is telling you the number and breaking it to you. You beat me to it, so everything else should be smooth sailing. I want to give you a little background.
Do you mind pulling that mic up just as much as it'll go? You are definitely tall.
Oh, it's like I'm tall or something.
So, yeah. Thank you so much.
No problem. Since I haven't had a chance to meet many of you before, I want to give you a quick background on myself, because it will probably come up as we speak a bit today in relevance. I work for that national group that Captain Scogler mentioned, Best Friends Animal Society. It's a national animal welfare organization, much akin to HSUS, ASPCA, one of those other acronyms about animal welfare. We work nationally. I am the director for the Mountain West region, so I oversee relationships with around 287 organizations throughout the country. And other than that, I come from a background of municipal animal services. So I come from Orange County over in Florida, much bigger scope of land. We handled, I think when I was working there since the early 2000s, we brought in approximately 25,000 animals a year into our shelter. We responded to about 40,000 calls a year. I was a field services officer, like our ACOs back there, when I started, and since then I've kind of worked around the country in a number of different organizations. So not only are we kind of talking today, and when I speak about this from firsthand experience at West Valley, but from I've been in different places and seen it, so we can very much speak to the truth of it. But beyond that, I'm going to jump in and just real quick to touch on kind of essentially what West Valley has been handling historically. West Valley, up until last year or earlier in 24, where we did have a major decrease in the animals coming in because we transitioned to a 100% contract service-based model to basically keep things stable and to stabilize the organization. It has been the second largest organization in the state for animal sheltering. 4,000, 5,000 animals a year at some years almost. We have seen a decrease in that. In 2020, COVID, everybody across the nation saw a decrease in animals coming through the door, so that is a national dip that we see there. The second piece there is live release rate. It is kind of the, it's that metric that most organizations, animal welfare organizations, shelters, municipal or private, are going to look at in a lot of ways to determine how successful they are being. That metric essentially being how many things that are coming in are leaving alive. That's just the truth of that. West Valley Humane Society for a number of years, again, going back to 2020, has been an organization that has done very well in life-saving and getting things back out the door. The reason that's so important when we talk from a municipal perspective is these animals have owners. It's their property. We want those animals to get back to their owners. We want them to find new owners. That matters. We want people to have their property back. And in a lot of contexts we discuss, as it's written in code and ordinance, animals are property. So there's not just that perspective of, this is a pet, I love it, this is my, family animal, this is a piece of property as well. So there is the truth to that on both sides. Okay, so the not so fun number. This is a sticker shock number, there is no doubt about it. The number we're talking about today is a little different than the one we first started talking about when we approached NAMPA earlier in the year. When we started talking about funding support in 25, we provided a number of around 600,000, if I remember correctly. Talking about funding for 26, we are talking a little higher. We're talking about 720. That's based on about a 20% increase as we've done our budgets for 26. We have made that request similarly to Caldwell. Well, we'll be making with Caldwell next week, and with Cannon County, we proposed that budget request last week. Their request is for $340,000, so a $40,000 increase for them. Our total budget going into 26 is just over 2.5, and truth be told, we are holding ourselves more accountable than anybody else in terms of funding and support. We are setting that benchmark for West Valley funding, donor funding, and revenue generation of $945,000 for us, much higher than we've historically funded in the past, requested in the past. There's a nice breakdown as to where that number is coming from. Right. So, like I said, that number is much larger. We did that number based on, and actually, before I say that, we worked very closely, like Captain Skoglund said, with Idaho Humane Society when we were initially trying to stabilize the organization in June, starting in June of last year. These numbers, these metrics, and kind of the formulas for it did come from their recommendations as well. So these are looking at both the number of animals that have come into the shelter from the jurisdiction for care, so that metric, that percentage, as well as the population, so that per capita need for the cities or the county, okay? So Canyon County, historically, our care percentage is around 16% of the animals that are coming into the organization are from county, so unincorporated Canyon County, 48% and 36% respectively. Actually, I need to correct myself real quick. That care percentage is actually the metric of, and we'll see this in the slide here in a second, not just the care percentage, but that population metric as well. So the average population difference and that metric. So NAMPA being the largest population that we're serving, that number's going to be pretty high. If we looked at it just purely on animals coming in, it's going to be a little lower. We're actually going to see that Caldwell is creeping up in terms of the animals that are coming in, and NAMPA is slowly creeping down because of some of the good work the ACOs are doing in terms of reunification, things like that. There is a note here that Canyon County does provide our building, full disclosure, if that wasn't known yet, and about $100,000 of that funding is from building maintenance, funding requests for that. So they handle funding maintenance, building maintenance, things like that. So their operational support is just at $240,000 for next year. All right, I'm going to jump to the next slide here to show this a little bit better. This was also, I think, the most standout figure for us. We grabbed comparative organizations. There's a tool that Best Friends actually publishes that is a one-to-one comparison tool that measures organizations around the state and around the country compared to their intakes, their care provided, and we can look at the per capita numbers in terms of animals coming in that they're servicing. These are organizations that are relatively in the same service type as West Valley Humane Society and in our communities are serving, and our per capita cost for those organizations. Pocatello is quite high, one of the highest in terms of services that they provide and how much they are getting paid. Their organization, yeah, $23.68 is very, very high. It's impressive. It's fantastic. I'm not asking you for that. I promise you that. And these are 24 per capita numbers, by the way, for clarity. We can see, obviously, though, that Nampa is wildly low on that list, less than 75 cents per capita, considering that about nationally 70% of our homeowners are, or just individuals are pet owners. That is a very, very low number. We can apply that regionally, we can apply that locally. 70% is a pretty fair estimate of individual animal owners, not considering how many they have. Most have more than one. Caldwell, 99 cents, and county is actually paying a relatively high of $4.23. Again, those numbers, for clarity on that note there, those are only for sheltering services. So this is not taking into account the field side services of Nampa, Caldwell, or Canning County. These are those statistics we were talking about here. Again, so we're looking at on the left there, those intakes by jurisdiction. So that's how many animals are coming into our organization, not just from the field, but from the public as well. So public are bringing us stray animals, injured animals. We're not taking into account owner surrendered animals in this. So I can't take care of Fluffy anymore. Can you please take it? We're not talking about that. We're only talking, I found this dog, I found this cat injured, something to that effect. Nampa, up until about 2021, was our highest number, right, with around 47%. We have seen a decrease in that. There's no doubt in my mind that is tied to that reunification efforts in the field. That is my, as a field officer, my soapbox that I will get on, so I will do my best not to do it today. But reunification in the field is the most impactful, not just for the animal's life, for the individual, but financially, it is a tremendous impact, and we actually see very good proof of that here. This year, so on the right side, same thing, we're just going granular into this year here. We are seeing, again, a little bit of that same trend. Nampa is not the majority right now, Caldwell is, which is pretty good shift. You guys about flipped, all right? We can estimate out that's gonna remain about the same throughout the remainder of the year. Canning County is increasing a little bit as well, but Caldwell is still gonna be one of the highest intake areas.
If I could say something
Please,
real
ma'am.
quickly, one of the things that we talked about, and just so council knows, I have asked GIS to give us an idea of how many Nampa addresses, and we've had this discussion, right? How many Nampa addresses reside outside of the city of Nampa that are either Caldwell addresses or Nampa? I should have that number sometime later today.
Fantastic.
It's because that's a difficult thing with intakes. We know how many we take and we can track that, but then the intakes are difficult. So we'll find out and we'll share those numbers with you.
Thank you.
That way you have them and we have them, the number of actually Nampa addresses that are not the city of Nampa. Because unfortunately, it's kind of strange, but we have quite a few. So that might help us.
Yeah, and it will be very helpful for us too. You know, I come from a baseline of wanting to be data-driven in every choice that we make. And I think information like that is very impactful, right? And we're constantly having those conversations with the community about what services we can or can't provide, and that knowledge does play a part in that. Some of this is also just an overview. This is just a refresher on what our current contract is requiring. So again, everything we're doing right now is contractual service only. We're not providing essentially mission-driven services, Humane Society services to the public at this time, purely to make sure we meet the demands of our contracts. For Nampa, that is city licensing, that is intake of stray dogs. Every dog that comes in as a stray, unless we can find an owner, is that stray hold period, so a mandatory 5 business days to stay on site before we can potentially adopt them out, get them to a different partner, whatever disposition they may need. Protective custody, which are potentially indefinite hold times, those are coming against abandoned, cruelties, bite cases, anything of that effect, right? Required to stay, we know who the owner is, and they're gonna stay. Quarantines, animal bites, so that's a 10-day minimum quarantine on site if the owner's unknown. And necropsy services, which is essentially animal autopsy services to figure out what happened if something did take place. We will say that with the stray and taken care piece, the 5 business day hold is something that, you know, we've started addressing. We've already provided some recommendations to county on ordinance updates. It's been a long time since some of these ordinances have been updated. I provide this recommendation from my nonprofit side. That is something we do as an organization, which is our legislative attorneys do ordinance reviews and provide recommendations on best practice. We did that with county ordinance, take a look at it. The 5 business day, the way that's written, is essentially adding an extra 2 days of hold. Each one of those days for West Valley is about $20 to $30 per day per animal in care costs, factoring in staff costs, medication, food, et cetera. The more we can bring that down, the more money we save. We've done a fantastic job over the year bringing that down. We're standing at an average of 8 days right now. We just had our meeting yesterday, so 8 days. Last year when we first came in, it was well over 30. That is a dramatic decrease in cost.
Question real quick, Mayor, while we're on the slide, and I did skip ahead in the packet to know that it was not going to be talked about, so just while we're on it. Stray and taken care, minimum 5 days. What's the average hosting that we're doing for a dog or a cat that comes in as a stray?
Right. So that length of stay that I just referred to is going to be that total time from moment in to moment out. On average, so like holistically across the board, not separated down into Nampa, which is something we actually could do with a little bit of time and crunching some numbers, but I wanted to be accurate, so I actually loved that data first before we did that on residency. We're looking at an approximate average of 8 days, and that's for dog, and I think it's about 10 days for cats. Again, cats that are coming in stray injured, they may require a little medical support, so that's fair. That's maybe a little bit longer. But because they need medical, that cost is a little higher, right, as well. So on average, I think it's 8.8 if I'm being exact, days.
So no animal is staying for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, or months and months?
They very well may be. So again, that protective custody hold, let's say it's a abandonment case or a cruelty case, we get those, that's when we're seeing those long lengths of stay, right? If it's a seizure or even if sometimes as simple as an individual gets arrested, they are, remitted to custody, they're, and for whatever reason, they don't have a next of kin, they don't have somebody who can take over ownership. If we know that owner, we can't just release it after that 5 days. We know who it belongs to. That is, I use the unfortunate parallel of a car impound lot. When I talk about this, if I know who that owner is, I can't just say, okay, 5 days, you're done. That's an animal that's owned, so that is property. We have to do our best to return that property to the owner unless it's signed over to us. In some cases, when I used to work in the field, we'd go to the jail and get them to sign it over. West Valley doesn't do that. We're not field officers, right? But we do implore and we do try to work more closely with our supporting prosecutors, and we want to work more with the city attorneys to have a better, clear communication chain, because that's costing every day money, either for West Valley or for the city.
Thank you.
No problem. Again, just an overview for context and clarity between our contract services and those, again, just overall encompassing services that a humane society, mission-driven nonprofit should be providing, or we are currently providing. Right now, primarily, it's dog licensing for Nampa. It is that basic care expense for those stray or seized animals, right? Feeding, initial vetting, vaccines, that's about it, right? And getting them back out the door. Necropsy, things like that, those other services from the other slide really just fall into those categories, okay? Those little X's are things I want to highlight as when we look at organizations that are operating at a high, we'll say a high standard, and in good partnership. There are things that do get considered in cost and contracts and services and partnership as we move forward, because they point to benefits to the community that end up, again, having potential cost savings. Relinquished pet surrenders, things like that. We want to provide a good outcome. If we're able to help people keep those pets, that means one less animal in our organization, in our place, costing that $20, $30 a day. That's saving us money in the long run. We provide a version of that already now, multiple of them, and we're continuing to expand what that service looks like. Home to home is a version of what we'd call that. So supportive, I need to find a new home for my pet, I need a pet. We want to connect those two, skip that shelter overall. Take that cost completely offline. We can do that pretty much hands-off, hands-free in most cases. Online tools, support, connecting with resources, things like that. Community cat programming, Idaho's unique in when it comes to cats. Very few of our cities or counties really refer to cats at all in ordinance. It's really just dog focused. That is very unique. That is the word I'll continue to use. But when we talk about things like cat programming, community cat programming, which is, you'd also hear it as trap, neuter, return, or TNR, or TNVR, any of those acronyms. The reason that's proven to be very impactful over time, and it's honestly a statistic I wish I had grabbed, is, officers go out for nuisance complaints, probably plenty. The cat's tearing up my rose bed, it's meowing at the front door. It's all these nuisance issues. Animal control often has to go out and deal with nuisance mitigation around that. Community cat programming is one of the few tried and true ways to solve for that. The historical way has been essentially trap and kill, right? Give me a cat trap, I'll rent a trap cat from the Humane Society, your officer will drop it off, bring it to the shelter, it'll most likely be euthanized because it's not placeable, it's not friendly, it's not a house cat, right? I always chuckle about that because I speak to this purely as a field officer. I do trainings around the country, and I will say, everybody has a house. When I say, hey, what's that house? That's the cat house. You always have to go to cats from. Every officer has one of those houses, or one of those streets, or one of those neighborhoods. I'm sure of it. I don't know. And the cat programming, it's essentially, hey, we can do trap and kill. It's repeating the same thing we've been doing for 20 years, right? We'll hear complaints from citizens that reach out to the city. Why isn't animal control do anything? Why aren't you making West Valley do anything? I've been having cats trapped for 20 years. This is not getting any better. That means somebody's had to go out and solve that how many times over those 20 years? That's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of lives. Community cat programming is, we get something, we spay it, we neuter it. We have plenty of best practice studies, research, and evidence that says, hey, this solves long-term if we release it out there, make sure they can't produce more kittens, more cats, and it actually reduces that population over time responsibly. It's solving it's closing the bullet hole, not just putting a Band-Aid over it. And it's a long-term solution. So that's one of those reasons we do say, hey, it is good to invest potentially as an organization or as a city, as a partner. Adoption services, again, this is something we're providing citizens. Individuals want a pet. Like I said, 70% of homeowners, residents, individuals have animals, have pets. That's, I think, I did the study, I did look up about $154 billion nationally in animal, services and revenue, whether it be vet care, whether it be pet stores, whether it be any of those things, food, supplies. That is money that's going into our communities. Adoption services helping get animals out from our shelter, which is costing us money as an organization and as partners back in the community, is a good way to help everybody out around, essentially. I'm spending too much time on the slide, though, so I'm going to move forward. I did want to point to this as well because we did talk about licensing. I want to be proactive before anybody asks the question, because one of the first questions we usually get into conversations like this is, well, we have pet licensing. Do we make money off that? That is a revenue generating service for West Valley, theoretically. Theoretically it is. But, and again, with some national trend, we're seeing this, we know this, is licensing is not bringing in revenue. It often is costing more money to do the licensing than is we're bringing in over the counter as revenue to the organization or to the cities. And we're seeing on this slide here, clear point to it, we're seeing a drastic decrease in the amount of individuals who are getting those licenses. It's hard to enforce. It's hard to follow up on, and the key thing that licensing is supposed to do, which is reunite pets, is not that effective. We have much more effective ways now of doing that. Kevin Skoglund mentioned microchipping. Microchipping is the most effective way to do that. That is without question the truth. It is something that from the veterinarian to the ACO to anybody in the shelter, we've had them set up in fire stations and news boxes out at community parks where people can do them without having to go anywhere, is a much more effective way to reunite our pets. I would strongly encourage us to maybe look at this both ordinance and part of the contract if moving forward to look at some maybe more effective ways of doing this. We discussed briefly in our last meeting, Mayor Kling, about some alternative ways that we've seen nationally are proving much more effective and would actually solve some of these problems in multiple ways in terms of licensing. The not so fun slides. So point briefly to, we did have, and I 100% agree with everything that was said prior in terms of West Valley struggles. The only reason I'm here is because of the struggles West Valley was going through in June, or coming up until June, when it really hit ahead. And myself, my team, our organization got brought on board to support it. We have, very happy to say, since stabilized everything essentially. We do have a completely new board. That is very true. That board has been instrumental to the stabilization process shortly because we are essentially acting as the executive director right now. One of the key things we wanted to achieve in 25 was bringing an executive director on board. Because we haven't been able to really increase the partner funding through 25, we are still funneling nonprofit revenue. So the revenue that we're generating as a nonprofit organization is going in to offset the cost of municipal services right now. And until we find a resolution of that, there are some major gaps that will remain to be filled. Executive director being one, veterinary support being another. That is nonprofit revenue should be going towards those to solve some of those other problems all the way around. We are, even though we are doing a great job in reducing costs, up to this year, fiscal to date, we've reduced about 36% of our operating costs, which is a pretty drastic reduction for us, and we're very proud of that. But it's also been an extreme challenge to do that, and our staff are seeing that strain. That is a concern for us. And all in all, because our contract revenue is simply not meeting the demand of what we're having to provide the citizens, we know that we're still losing money. We've been able to stem that tide. Quite a bit. We initially, when we first approached the cities and county, we said, hey, we're not going to be here by October if we don't fix this funding. So we were saying, hey, we need emergency funding right now. That was, and we've been very fortunate in being able to solve for much of that. That is still, we've only been able to set it off into the future though, so we have not solved it fully. So we're still, that burn is about $42,000 a month. We will exhaust that funding. That is both our nonprofit funding and our city funding. We're going to hit ahead by February of next year if we do not find some resolutions in terms of budget and partnership contracts going forward. Like I said, a lot of this does not factor in the actual needs for growth as well. Our capacity is at a max at our organization. We are not providing public services because we don't want pets in hallways, as was stated prior. We have to do this responsibly. We have to do it properly. We need to stand up to a practice that every organization can look at and say is the right way to do it. And we need to, take care of every animal in our care very, very well. And we need to make sure that doesn't change. We can't bring on new staff at the rate we need to right now. That includes our vets, which are the most in demand in the country. That is the most in demand occupation in the country as of February this year. Bringing on new vets with the amount we are currently able to provide them and pay is not going to happen. It's just the truth. Our vets up until a couple months ago were getting paid about half of what an average veterinarian is getting paid, around $40 an hour. We're happy to be able to get them up to 60, which is still not nearly enough. And those are essentially the closest thing we have to full-time veterinarians. We're still seeing gaps in our services on a daily basis because of that. As a national organization, I've been able to find some solutions. We have them using our telehealth. One of my veterinarians from my organization has offered her time to virtually assist and give advice to our team when they need it. Great cost savings, not on hands practical. They can't step in and do surgery. They can't, give medications and things of that nature. So we're still relying heavily on Viking Vet ourselves, which is costing 5 times what it should cost us to provide critical care to some of these animals. We know that's a problem. It's just kind of a snake eating its tail. Until we solve one, we can't solve the other.
Mayor Kling, that burn rate.
Yes.
What is it?
So that burn rate.
What is burning?
I really wish, I always have our treasurer, Tyler Byers, here with me usually, and I get to usually just look at him and say, can you help me out with that? He does a much better job explaining it than I ever will, but I will do my best. That burn rate is when we factor in income, revenue, and our general expenses, that's the amount at the end of the day after everything is balanced we're losing from our bank account. That's that money going out the door that we're not recouping in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. Burn means what?
We're burning through that cash. It's apparently a financial term.
see,
I'm not.
okay.
I'm not the banker or the board, so I'm not going to be very good at it. I'm a little bit more on your side of
what
that.
you're talking about. I'm not sure. You said the burn rate when I'm thinking euthanasia.
Before we run out of time.
Fair
Okay,
point.
so-
Luckily, not the case.
Right? Yeah, you probably should change that because that really made me mad when I read that. But it's actually what you're going through in your finances.
It's not an uncommon term.
Thank you. Well, it is for me. Thank you.
I'm on your page if that's it. I didn't know what it was till finance guy told me what it was myself.
Okay, so we have about 11 minutes or 12.
Fantastic.
And I think Councilman Bills has a question. He wants to make sure we get to questions. So should we let you, how long do you think
I would
before?
rather, I think, let's go ahead and do, because many things probably through the questions will answer what's on the remainder here.
Okay.
You all have the deck as well, and these are going to be hopefully continued discussions as also. So please,
Okay.
I'd love to yield.
Councilman Bills?
So it may also be for Doug, the question. I need clarification. Early on, it was City of Nampa spent $83,000 towards animal control. And your slide is saying that Nampa should be participating $720,000?
That's correct.
So that's a request that's coming before and it's being put in the budget request?
It is not fully in the budget request. No.
Okay. So what I'm trying to understand, and I don't know from a legal or from a practicality point of view, it seems like the whole animal control thing should be handled by Canyon County. And I don't understand why the duplication from the standpoint of, I get an assessment, I pay tax to Canyon County, and so they're participating part of it. City of Nampa's being asked, so then the citizens of Nampa are paying. Some jurisdictions, Caldwell's not paying as much. I don't understand the whole process. It's a county facility, as I understand, as far as the Humane Society facility, Canyon County.
The building.
Building. So then the operation apparently is being temporaried by your organization or guidance given. I feel like the leadership between City Caldwell, Canyon County, and a few other cities in Canyon County maybe need to come together and solve the problem one issue. And it seems like it should be all funded through the county because I feel like we're getting duplicate. Or me as a taxpayer is going to be paying, I pay county and then I'm paying city for the same issue. And I don't see that we're seeing the realization of efficiency and cooperation organization. I think it's got to be a pain in the backside for all various jurisdictions right now because we're all trying to do something but the reality is this lies at the desk of the county commission.
You just saw it with VRT, what happens when you start piecemealing it together.
I had a big smile on my face because, like I said, I think these questions are going to point to something I want to speak on down the road anyways. So I can 100% address that and give you some perspective, my personal perspective and kind of an organizational perspective to that. You're not wrong in any way. I will say that right out the gate. So just for clarity, West Valley operates as a nonprofit organization. We have been initially contracted by Animal Control. So this originated, our partnership contracts originated back in 2011 is when West Valley started taking over the sheltering capacity of unincorporated Canyon County. They own that building. They contracted with West Valley to provide the sheltering services. Reason for being, they made about a 70% cut in their cost by doing that. They were operating that facility in 2010 at about $1.2 million. That's what county was paying originally to operate sheltering site facilities at that same location, about $1.2 million. We took on in 2011, and have not since, and that is the crux of this entire challenge and why that sticker shock number has been up there. Those contracts from 2011, more or less until now, Caldwell's made some adjustments over time, and I don't think we have much one with Nampa, have not been adjusted in those 13, 14, 15 years. Those contract amounts have not really changed. That's why this has all come to a head, is because those populations have drastically risen, and this is not to your question, but just to point that piece out. That's why that number is so high. It's really just coming due. Is it a county versus city problem? At the end of the day, I personally am not going to say whose responsibility it is, because that's not where I fall into this. However, I will say that if we look nationally at really the three different models, we have municipal services only. That's where government is handling sheltering and field services. We have the nonprofit side, where nonprofit is handling sheltering services and cities and counties are handling field services. That's our model right now. And then we have that all-encompassed contract service, where that's going to be the Ada County model. So that's Idaho Humane Society, where they're handling sheltering and field services. And the cities, counties are handing over that jurisdiction, that authority to enforce those rules and handle that entire piece of services. I will tell you without doubt, the service model we are in right now is the most inefficient model of the three. It is the most costly version of the three, because we're having to split. And I will tell you, it's the most frustrating of the three, not just for us and for our cities and county partners, but for the citizens. I say this all the time. I mentioned it, I think the last time I was talking to you, Becky, was citizen out there, when an animal control officer shows up at their door, they're going to get yelled at about something that happened in the shelter. And we're going to get people that come in the door all the time yelling about something they're not happy about in the field. Neither one of us will both look at her and say, well, that's not us. And the community doesn't understand that. We are one entity, no matter how you look at it and how many times you explain it. So it's a constant version of frustration. We go the next route of saying, when we have county ACOs, city ACOs, and then you have a nonprofit organization, animals don't know jurisdictional boundaries. People move from county to city to city. Those laws change, those ordinances change. It's convoluted. I've done this my entire, my professional career is animal welfare. I will tell you, it's taken me a long time to know just what the ordinance is in my own home community is, because I don't look them up right out the gate. And who is? We know you don't speed, but we don't know the animal rules and laws and ordinances about being at large, about cat nuisances and how that works. A joint service contract, which is the Ada County way they handle it, for example, is the most effective. They do exactly that. They jointly figure out what each party's responsible for, how much needs to be paid, what those service expectations are. They've unified that service. I can move from Caldwell to Nampa. I can move out in unincorporated county. Those services are going to be the same. It's only a better benefit to everybody if we go that route. I would highly recommend it be explored. Caldwell's made a similar recommendation. They were the first one to make that recommendation. I strongly encourage it. I think it's incredibly practical. It's something we've started talking about internally, ways that can be approached. It wouldn't be quick, but I would say, 3 or so years, 3 to 5 years, that would be a possible solution, where West Valley Humane Society, I say this strongly, is in a place where we can have those conversations about growth and what that really means. We could talk about absorbing the field services as well and supporting that. That would be tremendous cost savings to all parties around, and that's a lot of liability off. That's fully on us, the nonprofit, to support. I've seen that model. It works. I've worked in that model. It works well. And it relieves a lot of the cost, responsibility, and liabilities and frustrations as well. Right now, I'd like to solve this problem first, of course. But I do think there is benefit to those conversations down the road.
Well, it's a huge, I appreciate that your willingness and acknowledging the issue from my perspective seems similar. It's just going from 83 to 720,000.
100%.
It just doesn't, it's just not going to equate. I'm not sure yet where that discussion will end up, but that's a sticker shock to me. So.
I'm fully appreciative of that. We knew that 100% coming into it. I think one of the first conversations we had was fully acknowledging how hard this conversation over the years is going to be. The truth of it simply is, though, that we can already we can say right now, like I said, for just about a year now, getting on to about a year, we've been providing core services only. Right? So we're not providing any nonprofit services. We are a mission-driven 501. We do have a core mission, and it's not to be a contract provider, it's to be an animal welfare organization. We've foregone that over the last year, obviously, to uphold our contracts, right? To provide those core services and meet that demand, and we're still seeing revenue lost. I will tell you, we've cut costs. We are running a bare minimum staff, and our capacity, our organization, facility is beyond capped, even running efficiently and well. We're only going to see that struggle go, increase. The unfortunate truth for probably none of us sitting here, I will say not for what I've walked into and are trying to fix, the largest part of this is over the last 10 years, up until those contracts first got started, nobody looked at these numbers and said, hey, we need to factor in growth. We need to factor in those needs. And eventually, and I will put a good portion of it probably on prior leadership of the organization, did not have those hard conversations with the partners and say, hey, this is what we see, this is what we need. They just offset that cost with that nonprofit revenue. Essentially, this organization has been running funding from bequests and the goodwill of individuals who have left, moved on, and hoped that estate giving would keep this place afloat. It has, but that is not the way to do this responsibly and moving forward, and we cannot grow with that model.
Mayor?
So thank you. So Councilwoman Jangula next, and then we've got about 2 or 3 minutes.
Nick, thank you for this. I appreciate the need, and I can recognize that. With all due respect, I will say the funds won't come from this bench. You just sat and listened to a conversation where we're trying to provide public service for our citizens as far as transportation, getting them to and from school and work for $862,948. You're asking us for $720,000. That's just a daily difference of you're asking less, $392 a day less than what our public transportation is asking us. So we'll have to figure something out, but that number won't be coming from here. And for council, I will just say, I think that this is where we need to go to the county and to Caldwell and say, we fund the Nampa Justice Center, and they don't provide any funds for that. So this is our gambling tool to say, we need you to pick up the slack here, we're picking up the slack over here.
Mayor Glee, just one quick question.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And I think it's for Chief Huff or for Doug. The 720,000, which is, I don't think, does that money come from the police budget? Or does it come from a different source?
GenGov.
General Gov.
It's GenGov, yeah.
It may be interesting to note, I don't know where to go exactly with this. I know what Meridian pays for their total animal budget, including animal control officers, which the budget next year is $749,000.
For Meridian?
Meridian.
It's 749?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I really have a difficult time with that number, but we need police officers as a priority. It won't be coming from this branch either, sorry.
So, real quickly, I just want to say, first of all, you've done an amazing job. Stepping in, doesn't live here, has helped us out in such an incredibly huge way. Thank you. The one thing that I realize is when you don't address a budget, which hasn't been addressed for how many years? We've been paying, we were at 75,000 for a number of years, went up to 83. The cost of doing business is considerably different than what we're paying. And we have to recognize that. I think that we're going to need to step back and say, okay, so let's look at the numbers. What should we be paying, that ratio versus the 70, was it 72 or 73 cents?
Yes.
Yeah. What is the right ratio? We're going to have to do something because we do not have an option to do nothing, I don't think. And so we're going to have to do something. I think we do need to sit down and have a meeting with our Canyon County commissioners. We need to bring Caldwell in. We need to sit down and talk about it together. It's challenging, and probably the greatest error is that we thought we could keep doing something for nothing, and you can't. And it's hit a wall, and it has hit a wall. So we need to have some further discussions, but I will say, and we'll get the numbers from our GIS and share that. The county may, hopefully they'll agree with our numbers of what the actual numbers in Nampa versus our address area is so big and encompasses Caldwell and the county more than just Nampa. So we'll get those numbers. I think we need to have some discussions. The one thing I have to say is you did come to me a few months ago, and yes, the number's gone up, but we haven't funded this year.
Correct.
25, and you're short this year in 25.
We are short this year, and I'll just be transparent in the reason that why these doors are still open. Best Friends Animal Society stepped in and provided a grant, a stabilizing grant of $450,000 to West Valley Humane Society to keep them afloat. Without that, the organization undoubtedly would have closed. We would have seen an influx of about 5,000 animals into neighboring Ada County, and that would have wrecked the life-saving impact through the state, which I will just put on that. Idaho is currently the best and most improved state in the region, in the Mountain West, with the highest amount of life saving. There's only one shelter in this entire state that does not meet that national benchmark of 90% for life saving, and that's down in Twin Falls, and they're going to reach it this year as well. Our organization was incredibly driven. West Valley has done a fantastic job, aside from all of its challenges, in meeting that life saving demand, and that's why Best Friends has stepped in. But that is that was an expiring resource. There's no way that can happen again.
Mayor?
So thank you for that, because without the funds that came in, we wouldn't even be open today.
That's correct.
So, there, we do need to address it. I don't know what the answer is, but we'll have more discussions. Did you have a quick question?
Very quick, and I know it's a long answer, but I need a quick answer. Hearing the perspectives of fellow council members, if we limit our funding or don't fund, I don't know where we land on that. What is the impact to the Humane Society?
West Valley will not renew its contract with NAMPA, which will decrease the animals coming into our organization drastically, which may allow us to keep our organization open to serve the needs of the other municipal partners, but that will be at great cost to the residents of Nampa.
Okay, and then just another quick follow-up. You said Ada County has figured out a method where they sit down with the great minds of the county, and Ada County does the funding. Do each city send a check to the county? So rather than levying the county at large, it's going...
That's why Meridian is paying 770, whatever that number was. Meridian pays 770-some thousand.
To the
I don't
county.
know if, I would assume it's to the county
Not
to run
directly
it.
to their
I don't know
veterinarian
where it is,
society.
but there is a cost
No,
to the cities, and there's a 770 for the city of Meridian.
I do have a copy
So-
of the Ada County contract. I'd be happy to share.
I would love to see that.
Why don't you send it to our clerk, and then she can send it out to everyone.
Happily.
Okay, so more discussions to come. This was very, very helpful. Thank you for being here in person. Thank you for sharing it. Really appreciate it. I think you see the stress sitting up here. So it isn't
is
directed at
completely valid and
you.
understandable.
Yeah, it isn't directed at you. Thank you. This has been very helpful, and we'll continue to work and reach out. And we will create, do you mind if any council members reach out directly to you if they have a question?
I would greatly appreciate if any did.
Okay.
And I will leave on this request. The only reason I left this slide up. The most impactful, most helpful tool we've had with our partners in the last year has been, as we redid our board, we did redo our bylaws, and we created 3 seats, one for each one of our municipal partners to sit on as essentially a government liaison. They've been present in every board meeting. That's been Aaron Williams with Canning County. We've made this request a couple times from NAMPA to essentially have somebody as a non-voting member. It's so they don't have any conflict of interest. They're simply there as a liaison, though we can pass information as quickly back and forth as possible. It's been invaluable to moving things along. I would highly and greatly request that we find somebody from the city to do that same thing to help this move forward.
Thank you. We'll identify someone to join.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Council, we will get the contact info to you. We will also send out any additional info, and I'll also send out the numbers to everyone. So I would stand for a motion to close.